Irad Ortiz has a tough decision in this year's Kentucky Derby. Marco D'Angelo reporting live from Keeneland Racecourse for Wager Talk TV. The upcoming Kentucky Derby is going to feature a field of 20 horses. There are two horses that look like the standouts in this race, and Irad Ortiz has to make a decision between the two. Irad rode both horses this past Saturday at the Bluegrass Stakes here at Keeneland. He won with Further Ado. Further Ado smashed the field, winning by 11 lengths. And he put up a Beyer speed figure of 106. That's the highest Beyer speed figure of any horse in this year's Kentucky Derby race. But he also rode, a week before that, Renegade. He rode Renegade in the Arkansas Derby at Oaklawn Park. Renegade won by 4 lengths in that race, but his Beyer speed figure was nowhere near what Further Ado's was. Now, the decision, most jockeys, in how they earn their money is they get a percentage of what the horse earns in the race. So naturally, jockey, if he's named on 2 horses, is going to pick the horse he thinks has the best chance of winning the race because that's how he makes his most money. That is usually the way it goes, but there are a couple of exceptions. 90% of the time it's going to be he's choosing the best horse, and that's actually a good handicapping tool whenever you are handicapping races. If you see a jockey that had been riding both horses in a race, which one he chooses is generally what he thinks is the better horse. But the exception to the rule is when the other horse is owned by a big trainer and a big owner, and that's the case in Renegade. Brad Cox trains Further Ado. Now, Irad does ride for Brad Cox, but he rides more for Todd Pletcher. Todd Pletcher trains Renegade, and it's also owned by Mike Rapoli. Mike Rapoli is one of the biggest owners in thoroughbred racing. Oftentimes, a jockey will make a decision not based on the best horse, but the best business decision for him. And that's why Irad Ortiz has a tough decision to make. Does he want to ride Further Ado, or does he want to stay with Todd Pletcher, who gives him more mounts and has a bigger stable with Mike Rapoli? Personally, I think he should take Further Ado. That is the best horse in the race. That 106 Beyer speed figure only looks to get better because that was Further Ado's only a second start of the season. I've always said third start off a layoff is always one of the best races in a horse's form cycle. But we'll see who he goes with. If he takes Further Ado will be the heavy favorite in this year's Kentucky Derby. If he picks the other horse, Renegade, then some people will read it as he thinks that horse is the better horse, but they don't understand the business of horse racing. That might be more of a business decision than a talent decision. Further Ado is a beast. On April 4th, Further Ado won the Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland Racecourse. It was a dominating win as he won by 11 lengths. He posted a Beyer speed figure of 106 in that race. The next highest Beyer speed figure of any horse in this year's Kentucky Derby is Commandment with a 101 Beyer speed figure. What makes his race so impressive is that he put up that 106 in just his second start of the season. In fact, was a second start off a layoff. They quit with the horse in November after he won the the jockey 2-year-old race jockey club at Churchill Downs, which that's where the Kentucky Derby will be held. That's a big edge for Further Ado, as he's already raced at Churchill Downs and shown that he likes the surface, and he won that race last year. Now coming back to Churchill Downs in his third start. And the reason I point out the third start is I've always felt that in a horse's form cycle off of a layoff, the third start is the best start. Why? Well, because the horse had 2 tighteners, and the third is when he will be at his peak performance. You always say you want to go into the first Saturday in May peaking at the right time, and that is what Further Ado is doing. Also, what makes Further Ado such a tough horse to beat in this year's Kentucky Derby is he has the perfect style for the Kentucky Derby. He is what we like to call a stalker. He has tactical speed. He can leave the gate and then find where he wants to go. Generally, he will settle in right behind the pace setters. Not too close to the pace. If it's a fast early pace, you don't want to be caught up in that, but he'll be just off of the pace so that when it comes time to make his move, he'll have the jump on all of the closers in the Kentucky Derby. And the reason closers are at the mercy of the trip they get is because the Kentucky Derby has 20 horses. Obviously, if you're a closer and you're at the back of the pack, that means you're probably going to have to pass 14, 15, 16 horses, and you can run into traffic problems trying to work out that trip. If you're a stalker, generally you're going to be racing in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth position, where you're only going to have a few horses to have to navigate around. That's what makes Further Ado the horse to beat in this year's Kentucky Derby. Don't sleep on Commandment in this year's Kentucky Derby. Brad Cox is going to be putting 3 horses in this year's Kentucky Derby, and Further Ado is going to get all the attention. But don't sleep on Commandment. Commandment has had 5 lifetime starts. In his maiden race, he finished 4th, and since then, it's been nothing but wins. But the margin of victory keeps getting smaller. Why? Well, he's been facing some really tough competition, mainly the Puma and Chief Wallaby. But he has posted back-to-back triple-digit Beyer speed figures. A 101 2 starts back, and then in his last start, the Florida Derby, which he won by a nose, he posted a 100 Beyer speed figure. Only horse to have 2 100-plus Beyer speed figures in this year's Kentucky Derby field. Now, he's a horse that'll probably be sitting mid-pack and will look to close in that final quarter of a mile. If they mix it up on the front end, Commandment will be coming late in the race and looking to pick up the pieces. Commandment is a horse you can't sleep on, and we will be looking to have him on our ticket in the Kentucky Derby. Now, guys, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Why? Because you don't want to miss a single video about the Kentucky Derby. If you want all of our Kentucky Derby content leading up to the Kentucky Derby week, where we'll have our big Kentucky Derby preview show once the post positions are drawn, hit the subscribe button. You won't miss a single video. Again, this is Marco D'Angelo live from Keeneland Racecourse. I'll be back with more Kentucky Derby content on Wager Talk TV.